Ladies and gentlemen, hello again from the Center for Healthcare Innovation. I am Hing, Executive Director of CHI, and we are proud to present to you today the second installment of our four-part conference series, CHI Innovate 2022. Audience joining us both in person and online, you are definitely in for a fun ride as we bring to you our most anticipated and entertaining segment, CHI's signature debate, which we call FACEOFF. With the conference theme, The Road from Innovation to Impact, this year's debate motion is very apt, where we have two teams of brilliant minds and incredible leaders to examine if it takes a crisis to produce the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations. To explain this further, Hon Tim, who chairs the scientific committee, will share with you his thoughts.
Hi everyone, I'm Hon Tim, the Clinical Director for CHI. Thanks, Hing. Welcome again to the debate. And I think all of us know that in the past 2 or 3 years, we've had many healthcare innovations sprout, thanks or no thanks to COVID-19. So that got us thinking, do crises like a pandemic or a war or a famine, for example, do they give rise to innovations that continue to give benefit and great good to the people forever? Are they sustainable? Or are they really just flash-in-the-pan innovations, just fit for purpose and destined to fizzle away once the calamity is over? So that was our question that we posed ourselves, and that's a question and the motion that we hope that our teams of agitators and advocates are going to do and battle for us as well. So we hope that this debate is going to be exciting, fiery, and civilized, maybe in that order. But to shepherd this whole event, we'd like to welcome back once again as chairman and chairperson, a very good friend of mine and also of CHI's, Dr. Suan To, who is the co-founder and medical director of Novi Health. Suan, thanks again for coming. Over to you.
Thank you, Hong Tim. Well, it's so good to be here and so good to see all of you here in person, and I understand hundreds are tuning in virtually as well. A lot of people have asked, in this craziness of the last couple of years and the craziness of the schedules that we have now, why are we gathered here today to do this? And someone just asked me, you're crazy busy enough. Why did you even choose to do this? I wanted to tell you that one of the main reasons why is because we're gathered here today through 2 years, I think, of incredible ups and downs, but the team that have assembled this, and I think the lineup and the whole CHI team, is one of the most incredible teams that I've had the privilege of knowing and working with, and it's one team that I think no matter what, whenever I can, I would always want to support. So you may not know this, but for the last 2 years, they've tried to get this event going multiple times, and I think last time we tried to do this in person was when they had to deal with a huge outbreak right here in NCID. So it's actually a tremendous privilege, and we have a lot to be grateful for, the fact that we're even gathered here today. So without further ado though, we are gathered here because we have an amazing, stellar team of debaters, and I understand they come from within and they say outside of the healthcare family. But actually, when I read their bios, I think they're all really extended family members of health. And really, if you think about what we do in healthcare, it's not just about sick care, right? It's about health and well-being. And the last couple of years, more than ever, have highlighted how important that is. So you'll see in a minute as I introduce them briefly what I mean, because some may not be directly looking after us when we're sick as doctors, but they certainly do their part in looking after us in and outside the hospital and our well-being, okay? So, without further ado, let me introduce the proposition team. They call themselves Team 606. Don't ask me why, perhaps we can ask them, okay? Now, the first member of Team 606 is none other than Mr. Jason Lai, and he is, come on up, Jason. Jason is the principal conductor of the Yong Siu To Conservatory. So certainly music is the window to our soul and health and well-being, right? Next up, Ms. Cherry Koo, co-founder and director of Advanced Ophthalmic Innovations and Aureus Scientific Private Limited. Welcome, Cherry. Last but certainly not least, one of my all-time favorite, and I have to say one of my mentors as well back when I was a younger doctor, Professor Paul Anand Tambaya. Now, Prof. Anand Tambaya really needs no introduction. He's a senior consultant and really a thought leader in infectious disease, joins us from National University Hospital. Okay, next, we have the opposition team. They call themselves, though, the Peacemaker. First up, we have Ms. Eiling Sim Devadas, who's the co-chair of the Sing Health Patient Advocacy Network. Whoa. We need to just let that sink in for a little bit, don't we? All right, moving on. In the circle of life, Dr. Jared Pun, Principal Consultant of Counterfictional. And rounding up the opposition peacemakers, Dr. Habibul Rahman, Senior Consultant in Psychiatry, Tan Tock Seng Hospital. Brilliant choice of music, I have to say, on both sides. Okay, now, couple of sort of brief introductory parameters for what's about to take place today, okay? So I will briefly explain the sequence and also the motion for today and how we will actually end up deciding, or rather you all are going to end up deciding on the winning team. So our motion today is that it takes crisis to produce the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations. For the purposes of today's debate, crisis is defined as a set of events or circumstances that challenges our sense of safety, values, or appropriateness, and causes damage to organizations, individuals, which cannot on its own be put to an immediate end. That's pretty heavy. So that includes natural disasters, pandemics, and wars. Arguably, we're in the midst of all of these events. So, do these events then spark and produce landmark healthcare innovations that are lasting? Or do they just really cause and burn bright only in the face of calamity? That's what we're here to exchange perspectives on and hopefully agree upon. So, the challenge for our debaters today is that the proposition has to convince us that yes, indeed, the most impactful, sustainable healthcare innovations can only come when we are in crisis, when we have no choices, perhaps. And that sparks the most lasting practical solutions for mankind. On the other hand, the opposing peacemakers will try to convince us that no, those type of triggers don't really trigger or spark impactful, lasting innovation, and that those that do last and are impactful largely arise outside of times of crisis, when we perhaps can think more clearly. Well, debaters 1 and 2 on each team will be given a total of 3 minutes to make their opening statements, arguments, and rebuttals, following which debater 3 from both teams have the honor of an extra minute will be given 4 minutes each for their rebuttals and closing statement. Now, the sequence is quite logical, debater 1, then 2, starting with the proposition, but there's a twist. Between 2, and 3, we will have a segment called Audience Speaks. And that's where, throughout the debate, as it's going on, you, the audience, both in person and joining us digitally, have the opportunity to share your thoughts, questions, insights, comments, put them in, scan the QR code, right? And we will be reviewing them. The debaters cannot see them, but we all can, and I can. And you can then also choose to vote up specific comments or questions or insights that you want the debaters to address. We will then select the top 1 or 2 points for debater 3 from each team to potentially also weave in to their statements, arguments, and rebuttals. Okay? So, then who wins? Here's where it gets even more interesting. And I had to have coffee before I got briefed on this, all right? And you have to focus here, all right? Now, before we start, we are going to have a pre-debate poll where you will log in, and then you will vote at the beginning, before anyone says anything, what your stand is. You decide for yourself, okay? Then after hearing all the arguments from the debaters, at the end of the debate, we will poll you again. And the winning team is the team that manages to achieve the largest swing. So in other words, if we start off with everyone for the motion, and the end, we end up with more people for the motion, proposition might win, right? On the other hand, if we end up we start off neutral, and one manages to sway you more than the other, again, pretty straightforward. Whoever swayed you in whatever direction wins. On the other hand, if all of you are against emotion, likewise, if the opposition manages to increase that view, and more of you are convinced actually against it, then again, the opposition could win. Okay? So it's the delta change, the amount of swing that we're actually assessing here to see which team has succeeded in convincing all of us, and perhaps all of us have biases to begin with, so the team that can even convince us against our bias is the one that is most deserving to win. Okay. And then they tell me, as the chairman or woman or chairperson, I have the privilege, apparently, of selecting the best debater. Last year, that was quite a riot. I could have feared for my life, but thankfully, I knew I was in safe hands with an incredibly supportive and able organizing team, and of course, you all as audiences as well. So all ended well, and we all got home safely, happy, smiling, and laughing. The only pain we had was from stitches on all the muscles from laughing so hard, I think, a couple of years ago. Okay, so without further ado then, I think we would be ready for the poll. So, scan the QR code and cast your votes, please. Okay, you will have 20 seconds to do so. I will now count to 20. I will try to save my voice. But please do your best to log in, think about the motion, think about where you stand. Got 20 seconds to key in your vote. I should add that neutral is also an option, don't forget. You can vote yes or no, or be neutral. know we have a timekeeper, I think, who'll let us know when the 20 seconds is almost up. All right, time's up. All your votes are now locked in. Oh, thank you. All right, so, whoa, okay. So looks like 48% of you voted for the motion, yes. Indeed, the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations have largely arisen from times of strife. Somewhat logical, right? Okay. All right, I shall remain neutral. Okay, so we are now all set to begin. All right, I should just remind you that each debater has 3 minutes. When you have about 30 seconds to go, I will be watching out for our good old timekeeper and perhaps have to say, ding. Okay. I hope I don't have to be irritating. And at the end of your time, there'll be 2 bills. Ding, ding. All right. Okay, so we are good to go. So we shall start with debater 1 from the proposition. Over to you, Jason. Round of applause, please.
Is this on? Great. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much for joining us here today, and those are online as well. Thank you. Welcome to the Hunger Games. It wasn't very loud, but the music that was played when we came on was Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Da 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 da. So that piece was written by Ludwig van Beethoven, who we all know was a brilliant composer, but deaf, right? Actually, when he wrote that piece, it was at the age of 38 in 1808, and he was 70% deaf. So kind of getting on to be, it's difficult. For a musician, any kind of hearing impairment is devastating and depressing. And he was depressed. 6 years prior to writing this symphony, he actually wrote the Heiligenstadt Testament, which was a kind of will and testament to say, I'm in a really tough place here. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't think I can continue. I think I need to just bow out. This is too tough for me. And he felt very profoundly sad. But he went on to compose some amazing music, including da 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 da, the Ode to Joy. He wrote that when he was mostly completely deaf. So how did he do this? What was going on? How did he find the strength? How did he get through this crisis? How did this crisis turn into innovation and creativity for him? As a conductor, as an executive coach, and soon to be counselor, I'm familiar with breakdowns. In the orchestra, when I'm conducting, if there's something that goes wrong, I'm careful not to react, because that's a knee-jerk thing. I listen very carefully, and as I listen, I take time to respond. As an executive coach as well, I'm also listening very, very carefully to my clients. I'm listening out to what's going on through their issues, through their heartbreaking stories that they tell me. And all the time we're talking about him, and I'm trying to open the client up. I'm trying to make sure that they are able to talk about what's going on, what is their crisis, what is their issue, how can they sit with what's going on and tap into their tower of strength to reveal actually their possibilities, their sense of innovation, their sense of creativity. How can they come up and help themselves in a supporting way? I too went through a period of crisis. I pushed friends away. I wasn't happy at work. I was just in a very bad place. People could just say, oh, you're a snowflake. It's just you're in a midlife crisis. Just kind of suck it up. But it's not. It was something more profound than that. It was a mental health crisis. And I had unreleased trauma, unseen trauma that needed to be talked about and released. And after working through my crisis, after actually talking to someone, getting professional help, I was able to kind of, this period of difficulty gave way to a more mental wellness. I was able to sit with my issues and really explore what was going on. And through that, that's really sustained my progress. And it's really helped me now open up a whole world of possibilities. Hence, that's why I'm standing here in a debate about healthcare, and I have nothing to do with healthcare. Beethoven went through his own struggle, but was able to observe his own capacity to innovate and bring music to others by digging deep and seeing his own struggle and the personal crisis that led him to be stronger, he could now sustain a life of giving the others a gift and joy of not just music, but deep humanity.
Wow, what a start. Not only did we get convinced by words, we were serenaded by tunes. What a privilege. I'd like to remind your audience that as thoughts flow through, you can put in your opinions, questions, reflections, thoughts into I think it's called the Audience Power tab. So please exert your power and log in your thoughts, okay? We're now going to move on to the opposing peacemaker, number 1, Ms. Eiling Sim Davidas. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. And hello to all our audience here in the auditorium as well as online. My team, the Peacemakers and I, are going to point out why the proposition's argument is flawed, one-sided, and too simplistic. Crisis does not create the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations. The innovation they have spoken of, about Beethoven's Symphony No. 5, we love it, yes. Well, what they have mentioned might be an outlier, right? There are many crises, there are some innovations that have come up, and they may seem sexy, but will they fizzle out once the crisis is over? The truth is plain and simple. Innovation that arises during a crisis may seem impactful at that moment because it is meant to solve the problem. But once it is solved, is it still impactful and sustainable 10 and 20 years later? Probably not. First, we do not disagree that crises can spark innovation, but that does not make innovation impactful and sustainable. Add to that, the speed. During a crisis, the need for speed also means that the path of least resistance to solve the problem is often taken. We know what that means. It is like a plaster for a cut, right? It is a quick fix. So is this how a sustainable solution is produced? The answer is no. For healthcare innovation to be sustainable and impactful, there are many conditions to be present. And those of you who are here, who have been driving healthcare innovations will know this. Leadership buy-in, support from stakeholders, organizational culture, innovation-friendly ecosystem, financing and policy support, and engagement with your end users, your patients, and family caregivers. The human connection is key. If the user doesn't buy it, it is not going to transform the human experience in healthcare. Understanding what the patient needs and understanding and engaging them is therefore best done during peacetime, and that's why we call ourselves the Peacemaker. I'm here today as a patient and family caregiver, and I would like to talk about one innovation, the electronic medical record. 20 years ago, if you're a patient in SGH and you want to see a doctor in TTSH, I will have to carry over my reports and everything and tell the doctor all about my information, my health accurately. But today, the doctor at TTSH can just access my records from SGH immediately. So as a patient, this is very reassuring to me because I'm not worried whether I've missed out anything, and it elevates my patient experience and improves my patient safety. And this innovation took place during peacetime. Electronic medical records was only possible during peacetime because of the structural changes that needed to be made on processes and how doctors and nurses work. It can't happen during a crisis. Having spoken about all these conditions needed for healthcare innovations to be most impactful and sustainable, my second speaker, Gerard, will be talking about historical and cultural context of innovation, and finally, Habib will speak about the psychological and neural factors. Lastly, innovation that arises from a crisis are like sparklers that sparkles during the calamity, but not much more, right? What we want in healthcare innovations are innovations that shines like a light bulb. I wish I could light this up for you. Continuously providing light throughout and making lasting transformation in healthcare. Thank you.
Wow, there you have it. Fireworks, light bulbs. Okay. We are civil and friendly. But we are also just, I believe, the audience. I mean, this is the power of your votes, right? We'll leave it to you to discern and make your call, right? Okay, well, now we shall hear back again from Team 606, none other than an entrepreneur as well herself, Miss Cherry Koo.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for making time today. And we have heard from Jason earlier on the macro level and on the micro level, the meaning of the motion, the meaning of crisis. And I'll take this opportunity to also address Eiling's points on the confluence of factors that is required for innovation to happen. Let's take a walk to 20th century to crises like World Wars and Cold War, presenting environment of high stakes and race for intelligence and military comms. Without a doubt, crisis impacts battlefield medical innovations. And between radio telegraphy and fiber optics have long-lasting impact on healthcare innovations. For one, scopes used daily today. Second, provide access to publications of discovery and science, accelerating learning from all over the world. This shows crisis drives innovation in a variety of fields and stacks up healthcare innovations. Vaccines, from the time of smallpox, were developed in response to plague crisis. Vaccine saves estimated 2.5 million lives a year, reducing child mortality and eradicating polio. In 2018, WHO said, vaccines are the most life-saving public health intervention in history. Then comes 2019. COVID pandemic threw a spotlight on messenger RNA, the molecule that carries a cell's instructions for making proteins. For a decade, cancer researchers have started mRNA-based cancer treatments in small trials. However, it takes crises like SARS and COVID to bring this health innovation to market on a global scale. Reportedly, scientists say mRNA vaccine saves 20 million lives in the first year they are available. This phenomenon has not changed from the early days of penicillin and sulfanilamide, which was widely distributed only during and after World War II, for these antibiotics to become routinely used instead of being in the lab. During a crisis, something else happens at the individual level. During the 19th century Crimean War, you have Florence Nightingale developed hand washing, hygiene, and sanitation. The nurses in the audience here would be familiar with. Fast forward to current day COVID and climate change crisis had me personally encounter this recalibration to extend my stakeholders to beyond shareholders and customers, to the community at large, and also to the environment for sustainability. Now, I ensure healthcare innovations embody ESG considerations, which will not happen without these two crises. Crisis, be it a disruptive force stemming from geopolitical, economic, or environmental pressures, will tug at the social fabric of society and at individuals. The respected late LKY of Singapore, interviewed at INSEAD in the year 2007, said, "War and revolutions threw up a generation that was ready for change. It is also in this milieu that my colleagues and I were thrown into politics. It is not a vocation, but a crusade." In the same vein, state in Singapore has adopted and supported various healthcare process innovation during COVID crisis, from quarantine to tele-ART, and add-on labor crisis, robot helpers to talk to patients, deliver medicine, and give massages. This you see in the news yesterday. Moving forward, under this prolonged COVID crisis, some need more help than others to deal with stresses, beckoning for mental health solutions. All this comes down to the same result: crisis as the key driver to produce more impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations using tech, medicine, and energy solutions. And some say art, music, and dance. Thank you.
Thank you. She crammed a lot into that 3 minutes. Very impressive. Very logical as well, right? Okay. Next. I hear our next debater has a PhD in philosophy. And we have one that conducts symphonies and music. He apparently specializes in collaborative, purposeful storytelling. So I think you're up for a time where you can be prepared to be charmed, counterbalancing Miss Cherry Khoo's logic. Over to you, Jared.
Very much.
Dr. Jared, sorry. Dr. Jared Poon.
I can't do the charming, I'm sorry. But hi, my name's Jared, and I'm, as Chair has said, I'm the wrong kind of doctor for this debate, right? I'm a philosopher by training, and so my tools are metaphors and questions. I have no answers for today, and so I bring today just some metaphors, some questions, in the hope that this will illuminate a little bit about what good innovation looks like. I need a clicker, sorry. All right, actually, before we go on, let me address Cherry's really good points. I thought these were excellent, very logical. She mentioned World War II and the wars, right? And she's absolutely right. Those have driven innovation. I thought, here's an interesting thing. It turns out that during World War II, the US, for national security reasons, put in place a Secrets Act. They made it so that the innovations, the patents that were being developed in the US couldn't be shared, obviously, right? Because you don't want the kind of war-relevant patents to be shared with the other side. So they put in place the Secrets Act because of the war, because of the crisis. And I think studies have suggested that actually innovation has been dampened for decades after that because of the Secrets Act, because of the crisis, right? So war's not necessarily very good for innovation. Okay, but let's take a breath. Let's get out of this like crisis mode, this very stressful debate format. Take a break, look at the ducks, and think beyond the most immediate examples, right? If we want to look holistically at innovation, what does that look like? Does it look like a lizard? Does it come out of nowhere? Does it come alone? I mean, because lizards come alone, right? I've never seen a swarm of lizards. That would be terrifying. They come alone. They're always the one lizard. And is it accompanied by a lot of screaming, right? And I say that it's tempting to think that innovation looks like that because the most visible ones look like that. Or is innovation a forest? Does it thrive best in calm conditions? Is it connected to an ecosystem of things? And is it mostly not accompanied by that much screaming, right? Look at an example. So Cherry mentioned vaccines. So I think this is a really good example, right? mRNA vaccines, a big deal during our kind of recent pandemic. Think of your Pfizers and your Modernas. I think my understanding is that they came from a long line of research dating all the way back to, I don't know, protein synthesis and liposomes, right? They were developed in the 80s, actually, as a way to do research on genetics, not for vaccines, mRNA research, right? So it was developed as blue sky research for research purposes, not for like targeted solution-focused stuff. So probably not a lizard. So what does this all mean? I think this means we got to take a step back and ask ourselves, right? Are the most obvious, most glamorous innovations necessarily the most innovative, the most impactful? Or is it the case that they are the product of a whole forest of innovations that were equally just as innovative, just as successful, but just weren't as visible, right? So I'm going to say my opponents are right? My opponents are absolutely right that good innovation comes in crisis. Right, but good innovation also comes in the rest of our lives, the 99% of our lives, that's not crisis. Right, the rest of our human history, that's not crisis. Okay, so forests have lizards, crises breed innovations, sure. But forests also have so much more than just lizards. And innovation is so much, much more than just what comes out of crisis. Thank you very much.
See, what did I tell you? Lots of charm packed into 3 minutes. All right. Well, now it is time to hear what you, the audience, in person and online, have to say. Here are some of your thoughts. Thank you. I know some of you have already been sending them in. Maybe I'll just give you a quick couple of seconds to quickly digest some of the things that you've heard from both teams. And if you have some thoughts or comments or questions that you'd like to share or have them address, please put them in. Just give you a quick couple of seconds to do that. Okay, so thank you for your comments. They're coming in now, fast and furious, and being voted. Debaters, take a look at the screen. Those are some of the comments that have come in. Okay, a few more that have come in. Right, we have quite a few interesting comments. So if you don't have a new comment, but you found that someone else's comment really resonates with you, please feel free to vote them up. Give you last maybe 10 seconds or so to do so. Okay, I think we're good. We're going to close the audience segment now. And you have voted as well. And quite appropriately, we actually have the top two questions or comments, one actually in favor of each side of the motion. Okay, so we will please ask both teams, okay, to address these top two comments. Of course, in favor of whatever side you're on, okay? So first one is, the key word is impactful and sustainable. The crisis has definitely created the urgency, but as crisis starts to taper off, the question is, will the world continue to sustain the respective innovation with the same urgency and speed? And then the second comment to address is, but fear of lizards. It's what resulted in the most effective lizard traps. Love an audience who has a sense of humor as well. Okay, now teams. You have the comments. You've had time to reflect and digest. Nope, now we're going to swap the order, right? Yeah. So for debater 3, now it's up to you. You have 4 minutes, including closing statements and also to address the comments. For the opposition team this time, we'll go first. And we have Dr. Habibul Rahman. Big applause, please.
Okay. So when I heard that I was on the opposing team, like 48% of you, I thought, Diala. I mean, for 2 years, it's gotten beaten into us, right? Crisis is good for you. It puts hair on your chest, hair on your head, makes you dance a bit like Rooster from Top Gun Maverick, right, on the beach. And of course, you've got all these quotes, right? I saw one of those quotes from the audience. Necessity, the mother of invention. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And something by John Kennedy, which sounds like cultural appropriation. But then I realized, wait a minute. Why are all these quotes in black and white? Why are they by men who are no longer around? And why, most importantly, have we not heard of this quote? It takes a crisis to produce the most, other than, our lovely proposition over there. Clearly, stranger things are afoot. So you know when you came in and you decided which side you're on, you're actually picking a side. I call this the peel fresh paradox, right? You are choosing peel fresh, proposition, or kopitiam humble orange juice, opposition. For those of you who chose a proposition and you were told 100% juice, right? Go to the last squeeze, any fresh, you'll have to peel it yourself. Do you know what you were peeling? If you had chosen, not the proposition, peel fresh, you would have gotten a lot of other things other than just juice. In fact, you'll get milk solids for sure. And if you're really lucky, you'll get even like fish products at the bottom there. A lot of extra. If you chose the opposition, you'd have gotten 3 oranges. In every cup, there's 3 oranges. The first orange would have come to you from Eiling. And she has shown to you, and this is recorded by Clayton Christensen in his book. It's inimitable, right? The Innovator's Prescription for Healthcare. And he talks about these things that drive innovation. Digitalization, healthcare economics, regulations, and a whole ecosystem, the forest that gets developed, not crisis. The second orange came to you from Jared, who talked about healthcare being a complex system. It is not the lizard that jumps out of you. It is a garden. It is a forest. It's something that is carefully cultivated. And I'm going to give you the last orange. But first, I need you to do an experiment, okay? Since we're on the topic of fruits, I want you to name as many fruits as you can, starting with the letter N. And I'm going to induce a little bit of a crisis, right, like a true psychiatrist does. I'm going to give you a timer. Right, ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. How do you do? How many of you are like, what? What just happened? How many of you went, Union, orange, apple? Sorry, 0 points. If you said Nangka, I'll give you half a point. If you said na, I'm going to take away points for that, right? No, but if you were calm, right, you would have guessed this. Nectarine, right? What just happened in a crisis to you is that your brain shut down. You couldn't make decisions and you actually started to gamble. So in crisis, we select. We do not produce innovations. We select from what we have already produced during peace. And in crisis, unfortunately, the data that returns to you, whether you are successful, you jumped to the lion's den, you came out, you think jumping in is fine. It is not. It is not an innovation. It's just that you escaped. That data tells you that you were successful. Where we do not have selections available, we gamble. And that is not innovation that is sustainable, ladies and gentlemen. So what did we produce in crisis? Trace together token, right? It's getting taken back. When you speak to your grandchildren about Trace Together Singapore 2020, they're going to think actually it was the name of the opposition party that stood for elections then. And as Prof. Paul Tambaya will tell you, vote opposition. Sorry, Paul. So between 2015 and 2022, we've got the same queues in MBS, except that in one, you've got people without masks, in the other, you've got people with masks, except for those lovely ladies at the bottom. So the only real difference is the new normal is the old normal, but with a mask. Unfortunately for the mask lady, she went to jail. Rewind 100 years. In 1918, we had the Spanish flu. People didn't want to wear masks at the beginning. Guess what? 100 years later, we've got the Wuhan virus, and people still didn't want to wear masks in the beginning. We did not learn anything. Why? Because what happens in crisis stays in crisis. And it's not because we've got mass dementia or anything like that. We've got what we call state-dependent memory. If you're going to interpret what's on your right there, basically, when you get drunk, and you tell yourself, I'm never going to get drunk again, the next time you remember is when you're drunk again. So we want to rush back to how we were. We are built to stretch, but we want to go back to normalcy. And forgetting is a natural adaptation. We want to leave crisis and move forward. And we generally do not take innovation with us. Creativeness, commitment, and curiosity, the other C's, not crisis, are the real producers of sustainable and impactful innovation, ladies and gentlemen. So after this, you're going to get a call from Paul. I hope you notice that there's a +65 at the beginning, right? If you answer it, you're going to go, hello, we are MOH. We'll give you milk solids. Don't answer. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Peacemakers.
Wow, wowee. Okay. So you see, who said doctors are boring? Logic, charm, wit, the whole package, right? That's a tough act to follow. Well, but we have none other than Professor Paul Anantamaya. Give it up!
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you to everyone who's here and listening in, even those of you who like the kopitiam orange juice, okay? Which frankly does not come from 3 oranges. If you believe that, I've got a bridge somewhere I can sell you, okay? It comes from this really odd concentrate. Now, the question that a number of you are wondering is, why are we called 606? Okay, just to clarify, we are not 666, okay? So we have got nothing to do with the end times. But 606 was actually the name given to a chemical compound synthesized in Professor Paul Ehrlich's lab. And it was the first antimicrobial to work. And many people think, including myself when we met for this preparation, that it was actually the 606 compound that he developed. He had worked on 605, which failed. Actually, that's not accurate. It was the 6th of a group of 6 compounds. And that's the basis of the entire medical science. And I think this illustrates what we're trying to say, is that when we try and solve a problem, you see, what was happening at that time, syphilis was widespread. And syphilis wasn't just, some painful ulcer that was embarrassing when you met your girlfriend, but it was actually a disease which caused dementia, widespread, all over Europe and North America. And instead of building dementia-friendly homes or building, dementia-friendly societies or things like that, people like Paul Ehrlich decided, we're going to do something about this crisis, which has been going on for 300 years. And he set his team to work, and they came up with this drug, 606 salvarsan, which was the first drug that was effective against syphilis, and it opened the door to the entire antibiotic world, which have had more impact than anything else in human medicine or history. So it began with the syphilis crisis, not just a flash in the pan, but a 300-year problem of people going demented. Many composers, right, had syphilis. That's how they came up with some of these great music, etc., etc. And I'm going to answer the audience question. There was one question about Beethoven. They said, oh yeah, Beethoven could have written great symphonies, but how many of you can hum Beethoven symphonies 1, 2, 3, and 4? Most of you not, right? You can remember 5, you remember 6. I don't remember 7 or 8, but you remember 9. So, and that was the time when he was almost completely deaf. So I think that goes for that question. The other question was impactful and sustainable innovations. So our second speaker, talked about Florence Nightingale. She was the pioneer in hand hygiene. And I can tell you, I spent 30 years trying to persuade people to wash their hands. And many, many people and my colleagues have done the same thing. But all it takes is for a major crisis, and they're washing their hands. They don't wash their hands, they get caught, or they're afraid they're going to catch some terrible disease. And this has happened, and this is something which has been sustained over time. And it's certainly had an impact in many, many, many things. Okay, now I'll deal with some of the issues brought up by the opposition. So they talked about plaster. Now, don't knock plaster. Some of my best friends are orthopedic surgeons. Plaster does great things for fractures. So it does have, even though it does happen at a crisis, it does sometimes have sustainable results. You get to walk again with your broken leg. They talked about, and this was a recurrent theme, the idea that innovation comes as a result of engagement, of an ecosystem. But you know what happens when you have engagement, when you have consensus, when everybody comes together? You tend to resort to the lowest common denominator. Everybody doesn't want to rock the boat. You want to continue realizing the fact that all these old people are going to get dementia from tertiary syphilis. You don't want to do something different. You want to do something different, you need a crisis. You need a pandemic, you need a war, you need something else. The first speaker also brought up this topic of EMR, and that shot an arrow through my heart. I spent this morning in clinic, and trying to order and change a CT scan took me about 10 minutes. As I said, no, you have to reorder, and it was just a nightmare. I had to call one of my juniors to try and help me out. Okay, the second speaker talked about the Secrets Act. Now, I Googled it. Using a device, handheld communication came about as a result of wars, numerous wars, not just Vietnam, Afghanistan, and World War II. And it turns out the Secrets Act actually came about before the Second World War. There was a Defense Secrets Act of 1917. So anyway, I think that argument sort of peters out. So finally, is this thing about the fear of lizards. Now, my mom doesn't like lizards, and she gets very upset when we have lizards running around the house. But the reality is, I keep trying to tell her, what do lizards eat? They eat insects. See, and I hate insects a lot more than I hate lizards. And frankly, insects actually cause a lot more harm than lizards do. So I think if you want to base an argument on the fear of lizards, that's really a bad idea. It's the movies which have given lizards a bad name. Okay? In reality, they are friends. And so finally, to sum things up, if you want to continue with things as they are, you want to accept the so-called status quo, then don't wait for a crisis, or don't recognize the crisis that's in you. Like our first speaker said, for an individual, it's coming to realize that, hey, I'm hurtling down this road that's going nowhere. If I continue the way I am, I'm just going to look back at the end of 30 years and say, do I really think that I should have spent more time in the office, or should I have done something different? Should I have taken this crisis to do something impactful and sustainable for myself and for healthcare? Thank you.
All right. Both teams have spoken. Can I just ask for a huge round of applause for all our debaters? Okay, now, audience, it is time for you to speak and decide on the winner. Okay, log back on to the poll. For those online, look out for audience power. Cast your votes. Remember, there were 3 positions: yes, no, neutral. Have you changed your minds? Have they swayed you? So remember, when you cast your votes, it's the team who persuades the largest swing in votes that wins. If you're feeling sleepy, we'll send some lizards your way to wake you up. Anyone feeling hypoglycemic gets orange juice as well. Okay, time's up. Not yet. Okay, keep going, keep going. Not yet. Okay. All right, the votes are in. Are you gonna flash the poll results? It's the moment we've all been waiting for. Okay, so to recap, right? Remember when we started, 48%, majority of you voted for the motion, meaning yes, indeed, the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations arise from times of strife. After the debate, we now have 56% of you voted against the motion. You changed your minds. says, no, the most impactful and sustainable healthcare innovations have largely arisen outside of crisis. Was it the orange juice? Did you get bribed by orange juice on your way in? The charm, the wit? So the winner is, I give you the opposition, the Peacemaker. Okay. So, oh, yeah, sorry, prizes first. Okay, we have prizes to give out. What are you going to give out the prizes? Oh, I give up the prizes. Okay. All right. Congratulations. You want a photo together? Huge round of applause again for the opposition winning team. I have to say though, I think there really are no losers in this debate. I think the proposition team 606 did a fantastic job and deserve a huge round of applause, please. So prizes for the opposition team as well. Hey, they say good things come in small packages. Photograph, and again, one last applause, please, for the opposition team. Okay, and then I think I'm supposed to, the best debater. Oh, that's really tough. I hope I make it out of here alive. I have to say, it's really, really difficult because all six did an absolutely stellar job. I have a very hard time deciding whether it should be the serenade, the incredible logic crammed in 3 minutes, purposeful storytelling, charm, wit, the full package. Okay, I think I did not get bribed by orange juice. But I think today, Dr. Habibur Rahman, returning debater from the previous FACEOFF, today is crowned FACEOFF 2022 Best Debater. I think this is also symbolic of how, he's come back second time, several years later. Through a lot has happened since then. I think this is also a testimony to resilience, I think symbolic of your entire team. Congratulations. All right, so I think this winds up this segment. Before I take my exit and hand it back to Hon Tim and Cheh-Heng, I'm told to just remind everyone that, well, it's kind of like Chatham House rules, right? Any comments, arguments, points that were made today should not stay in this room. I know it's recorded, so yes, you can replay, and it kind of doesn't stay exactly in this room. So that's where it breaks down a little bit. But remember, we are in a safe room, a safe space. None of the comments made today are meant to be directly attributable to any individual, nor the organization that they represent or do not represent, nor the chairperson,
nor the chairman,
nor CHI. Okay? So bear that in mind. Enjoy. Thank you. Back to you, Hong Tim.
Thank you. And can we have another round of applause for our lovely chairperson for today, Dr. Sue-Ann Toh. Thank you, Sue-Ann. She kept it very sane the first round. She's done it again. So I think you're going to be invited back again when we have our next debate. Thank you very much, Sue-Ann. Well, thank you, everyone, also to the panel of debaters and to that wonderful audience that's in front of us today and online as well. That brings us to the end of the second installment, episode 2 of our 4-episode series this year at CHI Innovate 22. So we hope that everyone here and also on screen, you've thoroughly enjoyed the debate. Personally, it's always been my favorite as well. And before you go, for the online audience, please help us rate the session today by hovering your mouse again over audience power and telling us what you thought of the past hour or so. For those of you who came here to try to make up your mind as to whether crises do make for better innovations, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you've got the right answer, but we do have some trends. And while the audience who's here with us live, do scan the QR code that you see on the screen down here. Okay, so from me, it's thank you, and over to you, Cheng.
Thank you, Tim, and once again, thank you to everyone for your time today. And don't forget to download the CHI Connect app, through which you can access a whole community of innovators and sign up for the next event, which is going to be happening on the 9th of September. And this is going to be our Healthcare InnoMatch. And with that, thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.